So I know you're interested in the nature of the universe, like I am, and I thought one way to get into the question about like what the nature of the universe might be would be to compare Newton and Goethe
Okay.
and their understanding of color. I mean, I don't want to get into the specifics necessarily, but the two different approaches would be, Newton was trying to like explain what color really was. Like Newton was saying there's something else, there's like these little atoms behind the appearance causing the appearance.
Uh-huh.
And Goethe was like, dude, I thought you wanted to explain color. You're ignoring color and looking for something else that supposedly causes it. And so, Goethe's like, no, pay attention to the appearance and learn from the appearance or the phenomena learn from phenomena what they are trying to communicate.
Uh-huh.
Whereas Newton is trying to like tear asunder the veil as if the appearances were just trying to hide something from him. He's distrustful or something, and Goethe's faithful to the appearance. I don't know. But like when we try to understand the nature of the universe, maybe these are two typical attitudes. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know that they're two typical attitudes.
Well, what other attitudes would you want to add to the mix?
Well, I guess, those are kind of extreme versions, and I guess it seems to me that that it's probably not the case that people's everyday experiences consists in such extremes.
Right.
So
Most people
I
are
just
not.
wouldn't say it's typical for that reason. They're both like kind of concentrated expressions,
Yeah. Well, they're both geniuses, and most people aren't.
Yeah.
That. And yet at the same time, I don't know, is it too romantic to believe that everyone has some little bit of genius in them?
Oh yeah. No, I just mean that they're both and unless like one is touted as being always the best case scenario for an approach that
Right.
one is maybe more reflective of what is the most important thing. That's kind of when like reading about magic and the magical roots of science, that I was talking about this with someone the other day, and we were talking about the word manipulation and the like charge around manipulation. And I think this is a good example because I was trying to express that I thought that the negative charge attributed to manipulation is somewhat justified, because when it's reified as the only way to relate to phenomena, then I think it is destructive. And that's why the negative charge in relation to manipulation is there, because we have like a moral compass. And I think there's another kind of magic that is not based on manipulation, but is more about like attuning and like almost like also bringing out or like amplifying in like a
inviting or
invoking. Kind of like I used to have this little powder. I don't know. It's kind of maybe it was an enzyme or something, but it's a root starter, and you put it on a root, like or the place where a plant could root, and it exacerbates the process of sprouting roots. Anyway,
magic. Well, those two approaches to magic, I think, are implicit in the theologies underlying Newton and Goethe's approaches to nature.
Well, but I think a theology like Goethe's can include the approach of Descartes, or not Descartes, Newton, but it just doesn't make it the most important kind. It doesn't reify it as the only way of making knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's important to have abstraction. It has been helpful to us, and it will remain helpful to us, and it's part of what constitutes our self-awareness.
Yeah, so we need both. We need both. And when we think about, so magic can be understood by analogy to our creation stories theologically, I think. The two different approaches to magic. Newton's theology was of a God that created the universe, like from the outside, via manipulation. God as an engineer that builds the universe and makes it do exactly what God wants. Whereas Goethe's God was more like a poet that was involved in the process of composition as, in a way, the very material out of which the poem is written includes the poet in some way. The poet is the material, is the medium, and not just the outside designer. Like a poet doesn't. I guess this depends on your theory of poetry, but usually it seems to me like the best poetry came out in a more spontaneous way and wasn't like planned in advance, right? So there's two different conceptions of God and two different conceptions of creativity, but they're both extremes. That's what you started saying. That seems right to me, because we're always going to be caught in between in some way.
Well, but I guess Goethe's isn't necessarily an extreme, because it integrates the part and the whole in a process. It integrates parts, because one of the ways to understand Goethe is by looking at his illustrations of plant morphology and the different moments that are like different parts. And so so maybe his is only an extreme in the sense that it's not something that many people actively cultivate in themselves, a kind of contemplative attention that allows a recognition of that kind of morphological process and experience. So not an extreme in the ontological sense, but more like when we're talking about typical perspectives.
Right. Yeah. So I love the way you describe that. It's almost like Goethe allows for time to be. It's just Topo Chico.
Yeah.
Yeah, they harvest that out of the ground underneath Mexico City, right? Or the aquifer under Mexico City. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true.
I don't know. It says from